Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Streaming Alchemy. I'm John Mahoney, and on today's show, we're going to be taking a look at Dante and VMix. How do you configure it? How do you route it? How do you use it? We're also going to be taking a extra look at BirdDog's new Dante to NDI Bridge tool. Really impressive tool, and I wanted to be sure we added this in as we were talking about Dante today. But before we get to that, I'd like to invite everyone, if you have any questions, any feedback, if you'd like us to cover anything in more detail, just drop a comment in the section below, whatever you're viewing on, and we'll get to it here live on the show. So, also, if you'd like to join us on the show, we also have video call-in that's available. The link is here below, and it's also in the show notes, so you should be able to just click on that and join in. John Drinkwater. John, thank you for joining us. I just noticed John dropped in. He asked Dante Light as well as sound. No, we're only going to be doing Dante sound today, so I do not, I'm not familiar enough with, I know Dante has moved in a lot of stuff with video. So that is probably a whole other show we can cover with the non-audio aspects that Ordinate supports. But thanks for joining us, John. I appreciate it. And we also have Richard from, as he puts it, smoky Northern California. So Richard, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it. All right. So what I wanted to do was really get started with looking at this from sort of a baseline. So we're starting fresh with everything. So nothing will be really preset up here. And when you think about Dante, what you're really talking about is a family of devices that are all interconnected through the Dante protocol. So this can be everything from mixers to small adapters to software that all work and talk via the Dante protocol. And so there are two main ones that we're going to be focused on today. The first one is something called Dante Virtual Sound Card. And Dante Virtual Sound Card is a piece of software that you can install, and it will provide different versions, different flavors of Dante connectivity to any software on a given machine. And we'll dive into that in a moment. The other piece, though, is they have hardware devices. They call them the Avio line, the AVIO. And so these little devices, they're cost anywhere from $100 to $150 a piece. Or they used to probably, before all the prices for everything digital went crazy. But this one that I'm showing here actually will take two analog inputs and convert them to Dante. We are also using another one of these Avio devices, which is a great one to have in your toolkit. It is a USB adapter that plugs into a PC and provides 2 channels of Dante in and 2 channels out. So very, very convenient if you ever need to get Dante up and running on a location without a lot of prep time. Excellent device to have. So let me see. So the other thing that I want to make sure we cover, let me just start up our screen capture here. So is that when we go through, sorry, just give me a second here. Capture setting, give it my mouse. So I think we should be good. So one of the other things that I want to make sure that we cover here are the different models for connectivity. So in the core Windows model, it's something called Windows Device Model, WDM, and you'll see this. Windows Device Model is one way that you can bring media devices into Windows, and it tends to be sort of built into almost every software application, sort of a Windows primitive for bringing in audio. The other is ASIO, which is the standard for digital audio workstations. The difference between the two, there's several differences, is that Windows Device Model, WDM, allows up to 8 stereo pairs in and out for a connection. whereas ASIO supports up to, I believe, 64 channels in and out. That would be, 32 stereo pairs. But so this gives you a huge amount of flexibility with how you want to do connectivity. So if you wanted to work with a traditional DAW style, it has ASIO. But if you're just working with general Windows devices, you can also use Windows device model. So let's actually just take a look at Dante Virtual Sound Card here. So we can see the interface. It's really simple. It pops in as a basic utility. And as I mentioned, there were the two options. You have Windows device model and you have ASIO as your two choices. You can pick, for Windows device model, it's 16 by 16, which are 8 stereo pairs in and out. But if I were to switch this over to ASIO, you'll now see that I have up to 64 by 64. So this is 32 stereo pairs in and out. Much more capable in terms of the number of sources you can route. The other piece is you have latency. So this is really going to be based on the network you're running on. And this will let you decide how much of a delay I'm going to inject in the audio stream to make sure that we don't drop data, that everything gets delivered one end to the other. The other thing that you have is you can pick the Ethernet port that you want Dante to be routed out of. So this is something, if you remember when we were talking last week, this is something new that they added to, that NewTek added to NDI 5, where you can now select a specific NIC. This has been something that's been in Dante all along and is incredibly powerful for making sure traffic gets routed to the right networks when you're dealing with sound. So to get started, I'm just going to keep this at Windows device model because it's probably the most straightforward. And then with this up, we just click Start, and Dante will then begin running. So now Dante is running for us in the background here. So next, I'm going to jump into VMix and show you how to set everything up there. But before we do that, I just wanted to catch up with everybody here on the chat. So Greg Terry, Greg, thank you very much. I had a great time with you last night. Last night we got to be on Stephen Hayward's Broadcast Now show, where Greg is one of the co-hosts, and that was a lot of fun. We got to talk about some really cool stuff about remote guests. So I enjoyed that very much. So Greg, thank you. We also have John Simon from hot and humid Montreal. So there's a lot of hot and humid going on these days. So yes, John, thank you very much for joining us. So we have Otis Granville, so with a true howdy y'all from Texas. So thank you very much. Thanks for joining us, Otis. And we have Matthias Johansson, so from Sweden. Matthias, thank you. So it's always great to have a global community. There's a lot of different styles of production going on in a lot of different places. So it's refreshing to see this many people globally enjoying something together. So thank you for joining us here. So let me open up VMix here and we'll get into the next part. So here I have VMix set up in what is probably the most basic setup of all. It's what you'd get if you just started up fresh after a new install. So we have the, basically from the audio side, we have the master and the A bus and the B bus, which are the three sort of default buses that are available inside of VMix. So in this example, we are using VMix 4K. And so we will have more buses, and I'll show that in a second. But this is where we're going to start from. So we just set up Dante Virtual Sound Card, and now this is a fresh install of VMix. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to go into Settings. And what we want to do is set up all the outputs that will be going on using Dante. So when I click on Setting, we're going to go down, and there's a section over here called Audio Outputs. So if I click on this, let me slide this over a bit so everybody can see. you have all of the outputs that are available to us. And so we have the master output, headphones, and then all of the buses A to G that are sort of auxiliary audio buses that we have available. So in order to use Dante on any of these, you basically just need to go and select it as an audio device. So in this case, since we're using Windows device model, it provides all of the channels preset. So we have 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6. So these were the 8 stereo pairs we talked about. So if we wanted to set this up, we could set our master out as 1 and 2. And then each one of these other channels, we could go through and set them up. And we'll do this live together. So not trying to make this pedantic, but I just want to make sure as we go through this, you'd see exactly what would need to be done. So here we set up all of the channels now. So all of the buses, so they're routed to different Dante audio channels. And one of the things to look at, because I know this can be confusing, and it actually confused me at first when I was looking. On the side, there are these channel selectors. When you select Windows device model, these don't really have any role. So for Dante, you're just the channels you select in this drop-down selection are the ones that will come out. If you were using Dante as an ASIO device, where that was the interface, then these channels are going to correspond to the channels inside of Dante using ASIO that you'd want to route the audio out. So in this case, we've set everything up. So our master's going out Dante 1 and 2, and then each of the buses underneath that are all routed out accordingly. So this gives us that initial setup for everything we have. And then at the very bottom here, I know this can be easy to forget, but just make sure you click OK and you don't click off, because I've done that a few times myself where you're like, oh, sorry, just threw away all the work I did. So when I do this, it's going to ask me to restart VMix because I've changed how the audio routing takes place. So inside VMix, these routes, I believe, are loaded up when you start. So when you make these types of changes, VMix needs to reload itself to make sure all the new routes are available in the application. So I'm just going to click restart and let this go. And so it comes up again. And now, if I come over here and we go over to audio outputs, everything is set up just the way we had it, and we should be good. So now that we have the output set up, let me talk a little bit about the inputs, because it works in a very similar way. So to add an audio input, what you will do is you go to add input, the traditional, I want to add a VMix input. And then as opposed to audio, which would be if you wanted to load an audio file, you go audio input, which is now going to do something it wants to bind to hardware. And just like we had on the output definitions, we have these same DVS now receive channels, 1, 2, all the way up. So all you would do here is you take and be able to select it. You have the option to mute in the headphones, just like anything. So if there's certain things that were back channel stuff that you didn't want to hear, you could certainly just, take that out of the headphones. And then when that is set up, you now have the audio coming in. So if just sort of pop out here a bit. So this will give you any number of the audio channels up to the 8 stereo pairs that we have set up here. So the interesting thing, though, is how do you really make all of these connections happen? So I've set Dante up as sort of input points and output points, but how does this all come together to form a network of connections, of audio connections? And that's where probably the most impressive part of Dante comes in, which is Dante Controller. So let me just slide this over here and open this up. So Dante Controller is basically a matrix map of all my audio transmitters, everything that's sending out Dante audio, and then a list of every device that is registered to receive Dante audio. So let me just pop these open completely because we have a number of things in the studio that we're using. So Alchemy Studio is the computer that I'm on right here. And you can see those are the 16 channels that we have set up. We also, if you remember, I had this audio device that was set up here, which is plugged in. So that is this little device, which is Avio USB that we have sitting here. And that has a left and right, so 2 channels in, and it also has 2 channels out. We then have our studio mixer, which has all the different channels we have coming in and out. Let me slide this over. When we have just other systems that are here inside the studio that are running that are all potential audio sources for what we want to do. So if you will look here, what we are doing in this case is, so we have another system which we're running as part of our production. In fact, this is for our live to air system. What we are doing here is we are routing individual audio sources from this device up here. So channels 1 and 2, which would be sort of guest 1 stereo audio. So we're routing those into the inputs of our mixer just by clicking on these boxes. So if I want to route any audio source to anywhere, I have that ability just by clicking these boxes. And you can see the lines sort of give you the matchup. I'm sending from channel 1 up here, and it is going to channel 1 in Alchemy Studio. And so it's going to make this connection. And you know, once that's done, it gives you the little green checkbox. But what's great here is I can take any single audio source, so any of these sources that are coming in from any of these devices, and I can route it to any number of audio inputs on any of these devices. So, you know, as you go down all of these devices, I could send this one audio signal to all of them. And that gives you a huge amount of flexibility. So if you want to do one thing to record audio separately on a different system, but you need to route it for, you know, different audio for ISO chords you're going to do, or for what you want to route to master, different mixes, all of those things you can do now. And with just one input, have basically what would be a distribution amplifier style output. Just pick the sources and all of them get it. And one of the other things, and I want to point this out because it's really important when you start to work with Dante, is that everything in Dante, because you're dealing with this large number of systems and potentially, you know, more complex network infrastructures, all of them use one device to clock their signal. So that basically means that there is a time clock that's going out. So anytime data is sent, the receipt of that data is synchronized amongst all the devices. And that means that you don't have audio drifting in and out of sync, because those bits are sort of captured when they're captured, but released in a synchronized fashion. So everything that comes in will be released in sync. And that's one of the real powerful aspects of Dante. But it also means that in whatever setup you use, you need to have some device that is going to be your Dante master clock. So in this case, if you look here up at the top of our screen here, it's telling us that our mixer, the Digimix 24, is our master clock for Dante. So it is sending out that pulse that every system uses. The other thing, though, is that there are other ways to do this. So when I held up the Avio devices, these devices also will act as a clock. And so if you're going to use this type of thing, this is what makes these really powerful, because they're a clock and two inputs and two outputs all together. So it's an all-in-one solution for Dante. But you can also, there's a software package called Dante Via, which does a lot of other things, and we're not going to get into Via here. But one of the things it does is provides a clock for everything on the network. But there's a caveat. VIA has to be run on a separate system from Dante Virtual Sound Card. So if you're going to set up systems using Dante Virtual Sound Card, you're going to need another system somewhere on the network running VIA to operate as your master clock. But if possible, I would recommend using something like the Avio adapters or another hardware adapter as a clock, because I think that will provide the most reliable infrastructure for everything you want to do here. So let's go back and check on the comments from everybody. So let's see. Otis just mentioned that he said, we just recently purchased an X32 USB-C ordinate device. So I didn't need the USB device. Yeah, I think, you know, you're mentioning that you could have used the virtual ordinate software. Yes and no. I mean, the big advantage you get with having something like the X32 is that you can, with the Dante card in that, you have that direct control of all 32 channels, and you can operate it like a true mixer. Dante as a protocol is not a mixer, it's a router, and that's very, very important. So for instance, using Dante and everything we set up with Dante Dante Controller here, that is something that you couldn't actually do something like a mix minus, because I can't take and say, I want to send these 3 sources to this one input. You don't have that ability. It's not mixing, but it will give you that type of routing, which can be very important there. So just keep that in mind. And, you know, I think Dante Virtual Sound Card definitely is a great local solution. But if you're using this for taking in a lot of analog sources and converting them, I think the X32 is an excellent choice. So let's see. So we have Samuel Nordvik. Samuel, thank you for joining us from Norway. I appreciate you taking the time to stop in here. We also have Peter. So Peter from Berlin. Peter, good to see you again. Thank you for joining. We have Aziz from Germany. So Aziz, thank you as well. I appreciate it. We have James Redmond from Arkansas. James, thank you. Nathan, coming from Australia. Josh, so you're like 14 hours off time with us, I'm guessing, somewhere around that. So I definitely appreciate you getting up and making the time on, I'm guessing, a Saturday for you. So so let's see. We also have Aziz. Aziz is asking, is there an autosave built into VMix? So the quick answer is yes, but let me just put an asterisk on that. Inside of VMix, there is something called the last session you had, and that is really your autosave. So anytime if you took VMix, made configuration changes, and then the system crashed and you needed to go back in, you would load last, and that will load in all of those sessions. But that is not saved as a specific named session. That's just your last session sort of sitting out there. So if that's the case, what you want to do is when you load that last session, go and write it out under a specific name or over the last session that you're trying to work with. Because if you make changes to that later on, you'll lose that original last session, and you won't be able to get that back because you'll have no saved copy. So that's really the way to think about it. But if you do things in VMix, I'd always recommend saving it out to a named session, because it's just sort of good practice. You're not counting on the last thing to be there. Also, if you move across machines, you wouldn't be able to take any of those changes with you. So let's see. So we have Peter Moyer. Peter, thank you for joining us from Los Angeles. Thank you. We also have Dennis. Dennis from Rhode Island. So Dennis, thank you. As I think I mentioned before, we're sort of regionally neighbors. So it's good to see you here. So Nathan Bennett. This is Nathan. This is awesome dedication. It is early 4 a.m. in Australia. So, so Nathan, if we had awards for dedication, you would definitely be getting one right now. So thank you for getting up that early. Or it maybe you're just going to bed that late. So whichever way it is, thank you very much for making the time. And so we have Idea. Hopefully I'm saying that right, from Brazil. So Idea, thank you very much for joining us here. All right, so there is everything that we've done here now should give you a pretty clear sense of how all of these pieces connect together. So I can send any of the outputs that we set up. So if you remember, we set them all up as from stereo pairs from 1 and 2 up to 15, 16, and those were all our outputs. And then we had inputs where I just picked in 1 and 2 and brought those in. But with Dante Controller, that is how all this stuff now gets stitched together. So the inputs I'm taking as 1 and 2 can be coming from any system in my network now. And for the Dante outputs that I have set up, I can be sending those out to any number of different systems inside my production network. So that combined is a really powerful framework for handling everything that you want to do with audio. And I think, we mentioned about the X32. There are lots of very, very good Dante capable mixers out there. And that really just gives you that next level of control, where not only do you get to take these as discrete inputs, but in the mixer, you can then create very specific mixes of these inputs and send them out, sort of republish them over Dante for ingest. So this would be specifically the thing where you would be able to create mix minuses. The other way, when you think of this now, because let me just go back here into how we have everything set up in VMix, is that now your buses, your audio buses that you have here, each of these now are basically Dante outputs. And so however I want to route incoming signals here, I now have that ability just by routing them to specific buses. So all the things I can do inside of VMix, like create mix minuses, where you can route what goes back to different guests, all of that is now available inside of VMix as well through the audio mixer. So you get a lot of power when you combine Dante and VMix here. So there is, though, one other thing. I mentioned at the beginning. BirdDog was generous enough to get us a quick trial ID for something called Dante NDI Bridge. And I just wanted to talk about this. Now, to give you a little background, I want to thank Don and John over at BirdDog for doing this so quickly. I reached out to them yesterday afternoon as I was putting this together, and I said, I'd love to just talk about the Dante NDI Bridge as well. And they got me an ID this morning, and we just said, okay, we're gonna put this in, because we think as NDI utilities go, this is really a new and very, very powerful capability that you should really think about adding to your toolkit here. So let me just put VMix down in the background for a minute so we can focus on this. So what Dante NDI Bridge will let you do is it'll let you take any Dante audio sources and route them as NDI outputs. So if you're working with some devices that are not Dante equipped, but can work simply with NDI, that can give you a simple way to do that. But it also lets you take NDI sources and route them in the audio part of that into Dante. So let me just talk a little bit about this interface, because it's actually really, really simple to set up. The first thing you do is you actually, just like we did with Dante Virtual Sound Card, you pick what's the adapter that I'm going to be using for all my Dante traffic. So you just select that. For us, that's our second network, which is the studio network here. And then you can actually set up and say, what are the Dante sources that I could potentially want to route out to NDI Bridge and through NDI. And you can then name these. So we just set these names up, but you can go in here and change any of these names to anything you want. So we just did this more as representation of this application source, but you can give them meaningful names. And I'm going to come back to that in a second as well. So you can do that for all your outputs. And for any NDI that you want to convert into Dante, you can just go and pick any NDI sources on your network and pull them in. And so you can set this up for 3 different NDI sources coming in, and it will put those out as 3 separate stereo pairs in Dante. And you can also do the same with going from Dante to NDI. You can go and select 3 outputs that you can then route 3 stereo pairs of Dante audio to route those out, those NDI outputs. The other thing, and this is really incredibly powerful, is that you can take this and you can also say, I actually want to do all 6 channels out 1 NDI output. And now a lot of people don't realize that NDI as a protocol allows for, I believe now, 16 channels, but I could be off. It could be 32. So, but it is a large number of audio channels within a single NDI stream. So this will now allow you, when you take multiple Dante audio, to route those out all in a single NDI stream. And I'll show you a couple of things after we do this. But after you have all this set up, you just click up here, and it has this really cool blurred effect with everything getting connected and initialized. And so now you can see it's all set up. I have audio coming in from NDI, and that is now going to be routed into Dante. So what I want to do here is let me open up Dante Controller here. Slide this out of the way. So now, if you look here, we have added on both sides the BirdDog NDI Bridge. And you can see that we have 6 inputs and 6 outputs here. So with this now, I can say I know that I have different NDI sources coming in here, and I can route those into my Dante network and pull those out. And again, this is where you have a lot of power, because if I wanted to use Dante for back-end recording, but I'm using NDI for the production switch that I'm doing, you have that ability now. Really cool. And because like Dante, NDI, one source can go to multiple locations, there's no downside. This just gives you a whole new side channel of Dante audio from your existing NDI streams. So this is really great that way. But one of the other things, because I mentioned that you want to name everything, and we did that over in Dante NDI Bridge. One of the things that Domain Controller will let you do is name all the sources that you set up. And I think this is so important as you start to look at, maintainability. Sort of how do I go in if something's going on and be able to look at my configuration and make sure I have things right. So if I come into any one of these sources, so this will take the BirdDog NDI Bridge here. If you double click on this bar, this will open up another window that will let you go in and rename. Just click on them and rename all of your channels that you're receiving, and also all of your transmit channels. So this means that when you set things up, you'll know exactly what the audio sources in or out should be related to these channels. And so as opposed to just saying, oh, I got 1 to 6, what are they? This gives you that sort of written scratch pad type of thing, a scribble board that you'd have on a mixer. you can do that right here. And I think that's very, very important to keep in mind. One other little hint is that you'll find that if you go here and you'll edit each of them, you'll type in, a new name, you hit enter, you go down and do the next one. Make sure you do it for the last one, because otherwise you'll have all these great names and then number 6 sitting there, because unless you hit that enter, it doesn't keep it. So that's one of those little tips that you'll have to go back in and do a few times, but you'll eventually remember it. But so this lets you do that, and once you're in here, I can actually go to all of the Dante sources I have, and any one of these senders or receivers, I can go in and rename everything. So strongly advocate that for sort of production manageability. So, but there's one more thing, because it's something that sometimes gets overlooked inside of VMix here. So let me add another input here, and we're going to take, this is an NDI source that, let's see, I got a lot of them here. So this here is the NDI Bridge Output that we set up. And if you remember, I said I want to do this as 6 channels. So let me just go in here and show you, when you go into the audio settings, what you usually come down to when you see channel mixer is you'll see 2 channels coming in, because that's what most things come in. But all channel mixer is going to let you do is take each one of the audio streams that are coming in with the source. So you can see here, we now have all 6, what were formerly Dante streams, coming into the single NDI stream, and we can balance their levels accordingly. And this can be useful in lots of different ways. So, definitely, something to keep in mind as a very cool way to have a mini submix here. So you could add the same source multiple times and create different little mixes here. So this is just another handy tool that can let you do things with audio inside of VMix that you might not have thought you had available to you. So I think I've covered everything I wanted to cover today. So what I'm going to do is, let me jump back and see if we've got anything else here. So Aziz just mentioned that he would love to see more videos on VMix, especially that there's a lot of, he wants more detail about things, and so that's something, definitely VMix is an important part of what we cover here. So that will definitely be coming in future episodes as well. So so we have, let's see, Person Rid jumped in. Person, hi back. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. And let's see, Nathan just asked a question here. He says, just wondering if you have thoughts on using GT Title Designer to create custom titles in black and white and animating them as a Luma key so you can animate layers. My current fun project. So yes, there is a lot you can do inside GT Title Designer. So we can probably jump into this a bit more in the post show. And I also have some interesting news I want to share with everybody then. But GT Title Designer doesn't just have sort of automation that you can do inside of it, but it also has layers. So you can set things up so that within a single GT title, you can activate and deactivate individual layers that can let you do a lot of cool stuff. So not only do you have animation with sort of movement, sizing, and scale over time, but you also have layers to work with. So you can do a lot of fun stuff with GT Title Designer, definitely. So let's see, we also have Matthias. So he said Matthias just said he's new to Dante. So we're glad, we can get people jump started. I think with all of these things, because I know when we think about shows, what we're really trying to do is not show you how to do one specific thing, but really open up a new line of thought around different technologies, different capabilities in all different products. So, hopefully, this got you thinking about new things that you may be able to do, audio wise or otherwise, because there are lots of different opportunities to combine these things in productions. So, if you come up with something that you think everybody could be interested in, please, we'd love to have you share it here in the Streaming Alchemy group, because I think that's one of the cool things about this industry is that people really do share what they know, and that's been a big help to me. So I'm glad that you're finding some benefit here as well. So, all right, so why don't we call this a wrap for our main show, and we'll jump in a moment to our post show. If you can hang around for that, we have a special announcement I want to make. But if not, thank you very much for joining us here today, and we'll see you next week. Take care, everyone. See you soon. Hello, everyone. So thank you for sticking around for the post show. What I want to do here is, let me just load this in so I could show you. We have something that I think we can announce now. It's been announced publicly by Paul Richards over at Stream Geeks. Paul Richards is going to be doing the NAB live show this is the first time for Stream Geeks to be doing this. And we were really honored that he asked us to do the closing hour of each day's show live from NAB as the Streaming Alchemy show. So we were really excited, and I wanted to just share that with all of you. So from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m., October 10th, 11th, and 12th, we will be live from the NAB show in Las Vegas, and we will try to cover a range of different things. If there are specific products or vendor information that you'd love us to sort of go out and take a visit to and find out more, we'll be happy to cover that there. If there are other things you just want us to cover on the show, please let us know. Put them in the comments. Share it in the Streaming Alchemy group. We'd love to have you tune in. But we were really excited that we were asked to do this. So thank you. Just want to let all of you guys sort of know first. We haven't announced this anywhere else. So thank you very much, all of you, for helping make this show what it is. And I think the engagement is a huge part of all of that. So I'm going to open this up because when we set this up, we were just thinking of how to do Dante, how to cover audio, lots of different things. And we wanted to try and sort of fill this in because we didn't think that from the VMix perspective, there was ever sort of an overview of how Dante would work here. And, so this would definitely be something that, we were looking to sort of cover in a way that was still sort of accessible to somebody who's just, this is my first foray into Dante. So if there are anything that we didn't cover here or that we didn't do a good job covering in depth, definitely just throw it into the comments above. So Otis just mentioned that hope to see you in person. So Otis, we do too. I mean, it would be it would definitely be great. There is going to be a booth on the floor where we're going to be streaming from. So we'll either be there helping with the production, or we'll be there, doing a show. So would love to have you if you're going to be out at NAB, just come around, and would definitely love to see you all in person and say hi. So let's see. Peter Moyer is asking, who would you recommend building a 4K computer system? He does want to try and source everything. So Peter, my go-to person when it comes to things like this would be Tom Sinclair at Eastern Shore Broadcasting. I welcome anybody else to chip in if there's been somebody else that they've used. But I think that Tom does an excellent job building the system, but more importantly, he does an excellent job supporting it. He has training. He spends. You have an issue, you can get on the phone with Tom, and he will actually help you get things up and running. So this is the sort of thing where it would be, it could save you a lot of time and money in the long run, because if you're doing this professionally, the time is money thing is very true. So that would be my recommendation. So Tom Sinclair, Eastern Shore Broadcasting. So so Nathan said, yeah, Nathan won't be able to make it out to NAB. Nathan, I can say, right now, there's a lot of places that are locked down, and travel is very, very difficult. So I really understand that. I mean, we're very hopeful that things will settle down with the spread of the virus, and that the NAB show will be able to go on as planned in the scale and scope that everybody hopes for. So that's something that I totally understand. And I know a lot of people are sort of debating what they want to do. But if you can make it out there, I would definitely love, I mean this for anybody. If you can make it out there, I'd definitely love for you to stop by and say hi. It'd be great to meet a lot of you in person, as well as just our little get-togethers on Fridays. So Otis is mentioning he's thinking of setting up a separate dedicated network for NDI and Dante to keep it away from regular network traffic. So the normal protocol, the normal setup for that would be that you would have a distinct studio network, and on that, either through virtual LANs or through two separate physical networks, you would have NDI traffic and you would have Dante traffic. If you do the optimal configuration for that, there are differences between how the two should be set up. So if you're doing something that is very small, putting them all on a single network probably is not going to be an issue. If you're doing something with more scale, a lot more sources, more audio, lots of different systems all talking together, then I would recommend going and doing this as two separate, a Dante network and an NDI network. And by all means, they always should be segmented from your normal traffic network. I think it's really key when you're thinking of setting up a studio network that during a production, you maintain complete control over every signal that's moving across that peak part of the network. You don't want any congestion to happen that's outside of your control. So that would be really that sort of studio versus everything else. Definitely keep those segmented. And Dante and NDI, I would consider doing that segmentation if you were doing something at scale. We had a show a couple of weeks ago about building a studio, and somewhere in that show, I remember putting up details about how you would configure for a network for NDI and how you would configure for Dante. So if you want to jump back and look at that, that could give you a little more detail if you want to set those up as two independent networks. So hopefully that helps. So Aziz is saying, don't you think it would be possible to do a big show with 3 cameras, live stream at the same time, record and use NDI, screen capture with an XPS laptop? Okay, I don't know. I mean, I'll be honest with you, Aziz. That's there's a lot that you're doing there, and it really depends on complexity. Doing 3 cameras, if you are doing 3 NDI, full bandwidth NDI cameras, each one of those at 1080 is going to be about 150 megabits. So you're already halfway through your 1 gig network with your 3 cameras. That's on the ingest side. So then doing, the live stream is upload. The, everything else you want to do where you want to record and do, screen capture, that's probably a lot to be doing all on a single laptop. Just, you know, throwing out what I would think, what I would be comfortable with. So if you are, if you have a very high-end laptop with a high-end graphics card and you want to use it for this level, it is doable, but it's critical that you keep that laptop cool, because the enemy you have with any production you're running on a laptop is heat. And when a laptop, well, any computer, but a laptop especially because of its compact size and how close all the components are, it does something called thermal throttle, which means that both your GPU and your CPU will ratchet back and run at a slower speed to try to reduce the heat so they don't damage themselves. So it's a sort of a safety mechanism built in. So if you're doing that, you really, I would look at fans, those cooling platforms they have, and definitely, try to do everything you can to keep that cool. And I would also, if you think about it, just make sure as you scale this up that if your system starts to bottleneck because of heat, that you still have a show plan that sort of says, okay, if I only am going to use 2 cameras, I know that 2 of my cameras now are well positioned. I can drop one of the cameras. Or if I had more complex graphics, I also have some simpler versions that I could use to just throw things up that may keep the branding but not have the animation or other stuff. So that may be another way if you're going to be running this all on a laptop to sort of keep that in mind. But that's, again, just I'm giving you a personal comfort level opinion for what I would feel good about. But there are other people here that I know have run things and have great setups for it. So I'm not I'm not poo-pooing your anyone's ability to use laptops effectively. I would just say make sure you keep thermals in check, and if that's not possible, at least have a more streamlined production that you can run if the laptop does get hot. So yeah, wouldn't the AC help? Yeah. So I mean, actually, that's funny because it's a double meaning, and both of them are important. So the first one is the air conditioning would definitely help. So anything you can do to keep that cool, but also keeping it plugged in to an outlet is also critically important. And I didn't mention that, but anytime you're running a production on a laptop, when you unplug a laptop, it's going to go into a lower power mode, and you will get deprecated performance across the board on that. So definitely, in addition to keeping it cool with the AC, keep it plugged into the AC, and you should be in much better shape there. So yeah, and Nathan said, yeah, have a backup with a laptop just in case. It's we're probably at the point when you think about doing things now where the technology has gotten to a level where it's practical for even on smaller productions to have some backup gear available. Things are not all astronomically priced. So Aziz is saying the cameras be connected via Thunderbolt. So okay, so I'm assuming then that what you're talking about is you have like a one of the Thunderbolt to SDI adapters, either as an external cage or something like there's a couple of them out there. It's slipping my mind right now that you'd be able to use, but that sort of stuff, absolutely, that should reduce all the network loading. And the Thunderbolt connection is definitely a good way to go. For this, just make sure everything stays plugged in, because these connections don't lock. Unlike a sort of a pro connection where you're using DisplayPort or SDI, those all have locking options. HDMI and things like Thunderbolt do not. So what I have found is duct tape and make sure anything, if something is not locked in and it can fall out during a production and ruin your production, duct tape could be your friend. So Nathan is also mentioning, something like an A10 Mini. So an A10 Mini could definitely be interesting as a choice. The other, which is something we're actually going to be doing a show on in a couple of weeks, is the YOLObox Pro. YOLObox sent us a unit to cover, and I think as we started to look at that, that also has a lot of all-in-one capabilities, which doesn't even require an external like laptop or anything. You can run it there with graphics and other things. So that I think, in this case, if you're going to be running something with VMix, that could be a great plan B for some of these things. So there are, but Nathan's point is really good. Just, have that, potentially other types of devices available to you that, if nothing else, you can use that as another part of your show. You could say, I'm going to have a sub switch that I do in the A10 Mini and feed my VMix system from there. So definitely different ways to do this. But good luck with everything. Is just set that up. Would love to hear back from you. So Otis says that he says, yes, we're in a church campus environment. I want to link our control room to our remote studio, to our remote video studio together. So there are lots of ways to do that. I mean, both NDI and Dante are excellent ways to do that type of routing. Based on how broad a campus and what the networking is, if it's a campus with sort of siloed internet connectivity and networking connectivity, then things like NDI Bridge could be a very good way. That's still not fully rolled out for the wide area piece. But sort of in parallel with that would be things like SRT for moving audio and video around. Definitely a good option there. BirdDog Cloud. It's for each location. It's like $1,000 per location, but gives you huge amounts of flexibility for routing audio and video over NDI. And with their support for Dante, now Dante will be a part of that as well. So lots of good choices for going, on a campus-wide setup. But SRT is sort of the obvious free choice. Free in terms of it's built into a lot of equipment. VMix has it. Like PTZ Optics cameras now have the SRT baked into the firmware if you update the firmware. So you could actually connect a PTZ Optics camera across the internet or across a wide area campus network into your control room and have a great signal coming out of that. So different ways that you can definitely do that. So Aziz is saying, I want to have different sources in VMix so I don't need to change cameras with the ATEM. So no, Aziz, I think this is fine. There's no the whole point in the post show is that we can talk in a more casual environment for these things. So these are the types of things we'd love to have a discussion on. So if you're going to be doing something where these cameras are coming into VMix, this is great. You definitely have options. There are Blackmagic converters that can take sort of the SDI out of a camera and route it through as SDI and also route it as HDMI. So you could use something like that where you could feed the same source to both an ATEM and your VMix system. So you can switch everything as your primary under VMix, but if something went down, you could then take and use that as your ATEM or YOLObox or whatever other solution. You could use that. So different ways to handle that. The other thing is doing things around NDI, where if you had a second laptop and you have some of these cameras that are NDI enabled, you could actually have them picked up in both systems. And that would be almost a seamless transition where there are ways to do this. I mean, you could take the output of your main one and feed that in as an encode for the second system as an input to encode. And so you live stream your first system. You actually take the physical output of your first system, put that into your second VMix system, and you keep that on program and you do your encoding and streaming from there. But in addition, you also have the same NDI cameras going into the second system. So you could always say, I have 1 or 2 cameras over there all the time. And so I know if the first system goes down, 1 button press on the second system will swap you over. And, because you're not really putting the heavy load on the second system, you should be pretty comfortable that way. So different, this is the great thing about all these different technical solutions. There are so many different ways to combine them. And I think, coming back sort of to the theme of the day with things like Dante and NDI, this gives you that ability to sort of route to multiple destinations. And that is really your backup plan in a lot of these cases where I don't have a signal just in one location. And I can just move from box A to box B and I'm okay. It doesn't take a whole lot of effort to switch over. And so these types of things, I think, are going to be your friend. And for everybody who's done things, I mean, we've had to cancel shows because things have just failed. Typically internet for us. And that we don't have a good plan B for still. But, it's, that could be something that, so Aziz is mentioning that, they don't have great internet in Germany. So, I mean, it can be spotty wherever you are, especially in venues and other locations. Internet can be, so not something you definitely would like to stake your reputation on. But, this is, that's where, you have things that have, bonded cellular options like LiveView Solo would be a good example of that. So you could take a LiveView Solo and use that to do an RTMP stream up to something like Restream. And that would send it out to multiple destinations for you. So different ways to sort of supplement the internet as well if you have to struggle with that. But hopefully this gave you enough different things to think about here. But please, if you want to have any other questions, just feel free to come back and post them either as comments on YouTube or in Facebook. And I try to get some. I don't always get to everything as quickly as I like, but I definitely try to get back and answer everything. So please, if we don't cover it here, just throw it up there, and we'll definitely try to sort out anything we can to help with. So Nathan's mentioning what venue. He's saying what venues always promise me solid internet. Yes, I'm sure they do. So yeah, it's it's like people's profile pictures and all the things they post on Instagram. It always tends to look a little better than the reality, So I sort of factor that in as part of the game when you're dealing with people telling you what they can get you. But yeah, I mean that's where things like having a LiveView Solo. If you're doing a lot of venue work, having a LiveView unit which can feed into the venue. So it has a hardwired connection that if that fails, then it's sort of going over across the bonded. It gives you a good mix and a great backup when things don't live up to expectations. I put expectations in quotes, but so that those types of setups are very, very doable today. And to be honest, LiveView is they have a lot of from a professional point of view, very reasonable plans for doing this type of unlimited, bonded internet. So definitely something to consider. I believe they, are also in Australia. I think we have a dealer down there, Chris Dredge, and I think he has dealt with the folks at LiveView, and so he could certainly. I think it's Pacific Live Media, I believe is the name of his company. So he could certainly, hook you up with anything you need on the LiveView side. So Peter's saying, so what is the head-mounted mic you're using? So this is I think it's a DAP. I forget the model number, but it's actually it's a very comfortable mic for me. I know if I had sort of the bigger studio type condenser mics, probably the audio would sound a bit nicer, but in terms of flexibility and sort of mobility for me when I'm sitting here, these mics work really well. But there are others like the Countryman that are similar to this, and definitely I like this myself, but there are other people who have different preferences for the type of sound. Sound is something we're always working on, so definitely definitely the never-ending struggle to get better sound. So let's see. Otis, Otis, thank you very much. I appreciate you, tuning in every week. And anything that we share here, we sort of have the pay it forward mentality. So, when somebody comes up with, to any of you and is trying to figure out how to do stuff, that's how I learned, and I sort of feel the obligation. This will all get to somebody else in the future as well. So, but thank you very much for tuning in here. So, this is the so Nathan just says he loves the Britney mic. Such a classy man. So, yeah, I don't even want to go there with comparisons. We'll just let that one sort of sit out there on its own. But thank you, Nathan. So Peter Moyer is asking about the IFB. So we're using a Shure PWM. I forget the exact model number, but so we use a Shure wireless in and a Shure for the monitoring. So I'm sorry, I just don't keep all the gear nomenclatures on the top of my head anymore. But so these are really sort of the same general brand of gear. So across the board. So I can post the more detail on this, but we really like the quality of the Shure Professional line is really noticeable in terms of the ability to keep the signal and to have it be reliable. So definitely I definitely would recommend those from personal experience. But I'll post the specific model numbers after the show, so you have those. So Aziz is saying here comes another question. Okay, so if I'm doing 3 shows on VMix in one day, how does the VMix caller work? I would now need to send the links to over 20 people. So there's 2 things. First, I will make a shameless plug for our own product, Live to Air. So in Live to Air, we have Call-in Manager, which would basically allow you to send out a single link to everybody, and you can screen those people and route them and bring them on board whenever it's their time to go on air. So definitely, if you haven't looked at that, something to check out. That would be neuralnet.com, GNURALNET.com. In terms of doing this with VMix Call, I know there are a couple of ways that people do it. So some of them basically will go in and they'll have to, for one show, they'll send out the links that go with each VMix call input. And then in the call input, they'll go to change the input, and they'll generate a new call ID and then send those out to the guests for the next show. So that way you can leave your show set up and still keep everything secure by having new IDs linked for everybody. The other piece to that is you could actually have, if you're doing 20 guests, 20 inputs. I don't know how many you'd have simultaneously, but this could be another case where you'd want to use the mix inputs on VMix. And so you could, if you're going to have, you have 3 mix inputs that you can use. So if you're going to have 3 guests at any one time, you could do all your show prep and sort of your session configuration with the mix inputs, and to just switch which one of those guests goes in which mix input. So that gives you another option for sort of sending out all these links in advance and having them there, and then working with different sets of them during the show. So there's there aren't great options when you have that. If you want to, just keep it to a fixed number of inputs. And that's because we talk about this all the time. When you're bringing on remote guests, you always want to do a tech check with them. Usually, at least a day in advance at the same time they'll be coming on. So you know that their connection, your connection all work well for connecting with that guest. So, that's something that there are different ways you can work around that. But those are the two that off the top of my head I would sort of recommend as approaches to doing this. So let's see. So he said, okay. Oh, so we've had a lot of questions. so Nathan said he'd love to help you ever. So Nathan's just saying, let's help you guys out if you ever need in need of a tech, from the future and very far away. Nathan, I first thank you very, very much. I definitely, if you'd like, contact me sort of after the show. Just send me a message through Facebook or something, or ping me as in a comment, and I'll get in touch with you, because we do have clients for live to air in Australia, and Chris Dredge, we do work with him, so he may actually be looking for people that could help with running productions and possibly doing other types of tech setup and installs. So he may be in a more direct way, be able to give you local business. So definitely reach out, and I'll try to get that connection to happen. So see if we can make something happen there. So let's see. Oh, so Peter Moyer just came back, and he said he was just wondering if we were using IFB. So yep, I have those headsets. And I can tell I'm getting older because I keep asking for the volume to come up in them. So yeah, I definitely need to have that there, especially if we have any callers come in. That's the way I would hear them. But also everybody, over on the production team, if they need to reach me because something's going on or I forget to do something, that's how they get in touch on set. So let's see. Yeah, so Nathan, Peter F was mentioned this to Nathan. He said that everybody calling in is kicking out the one in with the same number. So yeah, I mean, I think you can't really reuse numbers very easily. I agree with Peter on this, that that becomes chaotic. So I would either give everybody unique numbers up front and find a way to sort of switch that around during the show. The other thing is to potentially set this up as things that you would sequence. So you put in new numbers for each event. The other thing which just sort of popped in my head as a possibility for some of the ways you could set things up is that because you have multi-views, you could actually put the callers stacked in multi-views and just turn on the caller that you want in a multi-view, and that would let you potentially set them up, and then each show you could just put the next set of number of callers, make those in your multi-view, those would be the inputs you'd have. So there are ways, if you start to think about how you can work within VMix to make some of this work a little more smoothly in a live environment. So just another option to kick out there. So let's see, we have Wendy's is asking, is it okay to run Dante on an existing LAN that just has normal traffic? The short answer is it's doable. And, you definitely, as you test and, work with things, that's fine to do. But I will come back to setting these things up especially from a studio point of view, at least in an isolated studio network, it really makes sense. When you don't control the traffic flowing through a network, you're asking for trouble if you're doing live production, especially. So uh, networking gear is reasonably inexpensive now. So having something that you could have as isolated would be how I'd recommend it. But again, from a technical point of view, it it certainly can work. But it's sort of a best practices. It's certainly not something I would recommend as a way to set something up if that were a permanent studio setup. So Nathan says, yeah, I had 3 PCs. This is Nathan. Come back. Yeah, I had 3 PCs and switched between panels. Yeah, I mean, all of those things are possible. So uh, let me throw this at me because I think a lot of this stuff comes back when you do these things. It comes back to automation. So you have the ability with single button pushes to sort of swap things over. So like the mention I made where you're working with things on layers on inputs. So if you turned around and said, I'm going to have 5 guests on one show and 3 guests on another, however you have that all set up, you could just say, that means I have 5 inputs that I dedicate. And then for each input, I stack in the layers the other inputs I have set up for the guest that could be calling in. And then when I have all those guests in, I can just use automation to say, I'm in show 1, so it's going to mute all the other channels and just have the guests that should show up here be unmuted, and it's going to select those in the overlays, in the layers. So that would give you a very clean way to switch between groups on a single system. So I think with automation and a bit of sort of VMix smarts on how you can leverage it, you can make a lot of the stuff work more easily. But again, you have to think of it in the context of a broad workflow. How do I do checks? How do I get back? How do I queue up people and do all the things you'll need to do there? So that's some of the things that when you do this, you can solve certainly some of the problems, and but get there, get to where you want to be with it from something that's doable within a live environment. So let's see. So he says, so Nathan's saying, you got to love people who don't have time to tech check. That's my favorite clients. Yeah, yep. And it ends up, nothing good comes from, hoping. Yeah, that's that is not one of the tools in the live production toolkit, though it should be, but unfortunately that doesn't usually get you that far. So Nathan was mentioning he ran a convention with 65 people calling in over 3 days, and it nearly killed his brain. Yeah, I can see that. It is definitely a challenge when you have large scale. I mean, it was fun because one of the things that we did, from the neural net side of the house, is we actually built a system for a company that worked with up to 60 remote guests at a time, 64 remote guests at a time. So we got to experience sort of remote guests at scale and all the things that go with that. So I definitely appreciate sort of the whole range of issues with bringing in large numbers of people, tech checks, working with that number of guests during a live production. So I feel for you. I definitely get where you're coming from on not having a brain left at the end of it. So okay, so but I'm told we have a caller. So let's see if
Hi, how are you?
So Edward, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. How are you?
Very good. How are you, Edward?
Great. Thank you for having me here.
Oh, thank you for joining.
Question, please. About Dante BirdDog. This is similar to the NDI 5 bridge, basically.
So no, these are actually the two different product sets. So NDI Bridge is really just around working with NDI sources. So you take NDI in and you're pushing NDI out. And it does 2 things. The first is it'll do something called transcoding. And with transcoding, what you're actually doing is taking basically a video format, like how it's compressed, and convert it into another one. So usually this would be, I have full resolution, full bandwidth NDI, which can be like 150 megabits per second on a network, and you'll convert that to NDI HX, which would be more like 15 megabits per second. So it could fit a lot more sources on a network. So NDI Bridge does that, and it does it around locally if I need to sort of pump more sources into a single computer. But the part that's still not there yet, but we're waiting for, is that it will do it over the internet. So you'll be able to ship an NDI feed across the internet. What we showed with the Dante NDI Bridge, I know the names are very similar from BirdDog.
I know.
That is
That's the scenario that I went to trying to find out how to use it.
Yeah, so that is a converter between NDI and Dante. And so with the BirdDog's NDI, Dante NDI Bridge, what that will do is it'll take a Dante audio source, so it could be something that's coming out of your mixer, and it will convert that over to NDI. And so you can
get audio?
Just the NDI audio. So you'll get audio out in NDI, and you could bring that into other devices without having something like Dante virtual sound card or another Dante device. So you could take something that is coming in as Dante and say, for the rest of my network, that's going to be NDI. So that would give you that capability. It'll also let you take NDI sources. So if you had a camera coming in with audio embedded, you could actually take and split that out and make that audio a separate Dante feed. And that could be really useful if, say, like, I forget who mentioned they had the X32 mixer, which can take in Dante. That would mean that you could take that NDI source now, route them to Dante, and mix them in a traditional mixer to create all different, mixes and subfeeds and monitor feeds, all the other things you'd want to do there. So the two are similar in that they're typically converting a signal to route it in a different way. But NDI Bridge from sort of NewTek VizRT is all about staying in the NDI world and just making a full NDI band with a lower resolution, a lower bandwidth NDI source, and routing that either across the internet or to other devices. And this is about converting between Dante and NDI and Dante.
Copy that. So basically, it's mostly for audio. That's what I want to make sure.
Yes.
So I cannot transport video.
Right. That's only for audio there. So it's like $130 for the BirdDog
software.
That's for the software. Yep. The NDI Bridge, the one that we had talked about previously from NewTek, that's free, but it does require some pretty big hardware to run. So
I know.
So it's free but not free. Yeah. So you're sort of going to pay for it one way or the other. But
do you know if the BirdDog have any plans to release a software similar to NDI Bridge?
So what they actually have something. So BirdDog offers something called BirdDog Cloud, and we did cover this in a previous show. So like in a lot of detail. But okay. BirdDog Cloud will do something very similar to NDI Bridge, the NewTek version. It will take an NDI source and let you route it across the internet to any number of end destinations and pull that out as NDI, both video and audio. That has a different pricing model, so that's basically $1,000 a year per location. But you can have as many streams as you want. So and that's a software solution that's sort of connecting all of these, but very, very impressive piece of software. I mean, it's really starting to mature. I believe they are also going to be adding Dante into that. So this would really be the piece where you could say, now using BirdDog Cloud, I could route NDI video, NDI audio, and Dante audio anywhere I wanted it globally. And so that's really powerful. So BirdDog's doing some very, very interesting stuff. I mean, everybody thinks about them from the cameras and the converters. BirdDog's doing some really great stuff on the software side as well. And so definitely have some things that can make a difference for, from a production point of view, having that ability to route globally can be great.
That's awesome, definitely. But thank you for having me here, and congratulations to the Streaming Academy Alchemy.
Yep.
Because awesome, the setup that you have over there, I love it.
So thank you very much, Edward. Right? I want to make sure.
Yes.
So Edward, thank you
Yes.
very much for jumping in and giving us a call. Great to have you
All
here.
right,
Thank
then.
you. Bye.
Bye.
So Edward, thank you. I appreciate that. So let me jump back here. So Peter Moyer is saying, in your scripts, do you find the internal ID for the input programmatically, or do you use the URL? I would have to look again. I don't remember that off the top of my head. I know it is sitting in for the VMix call. I know it is sitting in the XML. So so in the sort of the VMix XML for the input. I just don't remember exactly what it is that I'd have to pull out, but it's in there. So if you actually sort of go and look at the, just do the VMix XML from your local host, I think it's /API:8088, something like that. You can take a look in there at the VMix session, and it will show you all the different XML tokens for that. And I think the ID is in there. So so Nathan has pointed out that NDI Bridge is free with a $6,000 computer. So for anything heavyweight, you're going to be doing, and this is with just that's really encoding and decoding. Yeah, you're going to require a heavyweight system to do NDI Bridge there. So let's see. Otis, he says, are you aware Ordinate getting into both video and audio transport, similar to NDI? So Otis, yes. Ordinate has been working on sort of a video piece for a while now. I know, there are some people that are using it. It's really interesting because right now I think that NDI really has the ecosystem around video, and these ecosystems are really a very strong lock-in. Ordinate clearly has it around audio, and they've been doing that and doing it incredibly well for a very long time. So in some ways, I think while there may be parts of the community that will be like, gee, I want to be all Ordinate, or I want to be all NDI, most people are going to gravitate towards sort of that hybrid ground where you use Ordinate for audio and NDI for video. That's not to say this won't change over time, because I know both sides sort of are aggressive about getting into the complementary space for them. I know that Ordinate is really focused on AV installs, which hasn't necessarily been NDI's strong point. And that's because NDI is something that's edge configurable. I have to go to an edge device and say, what feed do I want you to take? Whereas Ordinate's Dante approach has always been around, I have a central control point, Dante Controller, and what I do is I do the routes. So as opposed, it would be like NDI where it just comes up and says, I'm just listening, and that's all I do is listen, and then you tell me what video source to get centrally. That would be the way, so I'm sure that, VizRT NewTek is looking at ways to give more centralized control to NDI, because that would make it appeal more to the AV community. And I am, sure the folks at Dante are looking for ways to break into some of the production market and become a standard format that folks like VMix would be able to pick up and just bring in as a video source as well. So these things are never bad. You're going to get the best out of each of them, and they'll challenge each other to sort of overcome the shortcomings that exist on both platforms. And so I'm open. I'm very open to whatever gives us the best solutions going forward. So we have another caller. So Adam, so can you hear me?
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
Very good. How are you, Adam?
So good. So I just had a general question concerning Dante from like the hardware aspect. When it comes to hardware-based talkers and receivers, or transmitters and receivers,
Yep.
when they typically go through like a power down state or like a power recycle, do they remember what they were talking to and what they were receiving without the presence of a controller, the odd-nate controller?
So as far as I know, they do that. You don't have to start up Dante Controller to for everything to remember where it was at. So I don't want to give you a firm answer because I mean that would be something I would definitely verify with the different devices. So
Right on.
things
I
like
got you.
this. But I believe that is the case because we know when we set things up here, it just picks up every device sort of picks up its last route map and continues on. And it's only if we want to go and change something that we launch Dante Controller. So and we do power things down. So we have mixes and other stuff that are powered down.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm just now starting. I don't 100% trust it yet into my workflow, but I'm just kind of planning for it. Can you share an experience at any time that Dante ever let you down with your a live stream workflow, or like a horror story? Or I know you've already said a lot about it, and there's a lot to read about it. But do you have any personal memories of any time Dante let you down, or has it just been historically in your involvement with it? Has been pretty rock solid for you?
So there were two sides to sort of ordinate. I mean, the first one is their hardware. And I can say like, everything from this to the boards they put in mixers and everything else. So I can say the hardware really has never let me down from that side. The software, not so much. we we have had issues with Dante Virtual Sound Card. We've had issues with Dante Via where we've used it for like headset work and where somebody would be using that and it just you start up the system and it doesn't start up and you got to go in there and launch the stuff. So I think as a hardware platform, I am very comfortable with anything Dante related. With the software, I would just say you need to sort of stay on top of it. So don't just start up a box and assume that like virtual sound card is started up and or V or
Right.
whatever else you're using because it can turn around and bite you. So that would be there may be other people with other horror stories. We're not really a production company. We're a software development company by and large. So this
Understood.
is,
Yeah. Yeah.
but so this is so I'm actually getting verification. Yeah, Otis has mentioned. So he says yes. Dante remembers. So yes. So we have confirmation from the community. I thought it,
No,
but I
that's
just
great. Yeah.
so
I,
yes. But that would be. But I'm sure there are other people who can come back and give you their own horror stories. And yeah, that's true with almost any device. So I don't hold that against the company. It's sort of you do enough scenarios with enough different stressful environments and something's going to go wrong.
right on. Yeah. I just enjoy learning from other people's lessons. I found a lot of value in that. But hey, man, thanks for your time.
Oh, absolutely. And I have to say, I love the fact that you're calling me from a true tech setup here. Like this is
Yeah.
like
You like that?
hardcore.
That's complicated back there.
I definitely love that. I really do. That's where I started. I started in engineering. So anything when you got little bins full of parts, that makes me feel good. Uh,
Right on, man.
you take care. Thank you very much for calling,
All
Adam.
right. Later, dude.
Bye. All right. So, Adam, thank you very much for calling in here. So, let's see. Let me see if I'm catching up with everything. So, let's see. As he said, what kind of software hardware do the TV channels use, especially news channels where they use a lot of remote guests? So, there are all different ways to do that. So, in terms of bringing in remotes, there are things that are called insert studios and that are usually regional. So when you deal with a lot of the large networks, they can bring people into these local insert studios, which are wired up, and they'll use things like SRT or other sort of dedicated hops they have back to the network to come back in. Uh, they are also using, when they do things, Skype TX was something that really was a big piece of the network infrastructure that companies use. But I do know, like, our live to air product is used at Fox. It's used at other larger organizations, and can do these types of reliable remote ingest. So there are a lot of different solutions that are used there. Others, if people are consistent guests on a television show, they'll have something that's built into their homes, where in an office they'll have cameras and networking gear. Could be things like Live View, which can let you get a strong signal in and route that into a studio. So multiple ways that can happen on the production networks. But bringing on a lot of guests is really just channels and bandwidth. So that's more guests are not necessarily more challenging in a professional production environment. They have the mixing capability to create the individual mixes, and by and large, everything is coming in and it's clocked into their studio, so as low a latency as possible. So let's see what else. So Otis mentions that they've been using Dante with a Yamaha LS9 32. Yeah, I mean, Otis's experience, I think a lot of people from the hardware side are, and Yamaha, by the way, makes phenomenally good gear around the Dante ecosystem. So they have their Rios to do I/O, and they have their their TL, CL, and QL series of mixers. Those are rock solid, incredibly flexible. So yeah, I definitely, anything you look at with Dante and Yamaha, I would expect you'd be getting sort of top shelf performance and reliability on that. So Otis, thank you for sharing that. That's having specific devices is always good for people to take it, to use as a start point for where they want to explore what's going to work in their studio. So, all right then. So this has been great talking with all of you. I'm glad that this topic has resonated a bit, and people have been asking a lot of questions. So thank you all for joining. Really appreciate it. Thank you to our two call-in guests for taking the time to call in. That is always appreciated as well. So I'm going to call it a wrap for this week. So until next Friday, everybody, take care, be safe. See you then.